Welcome back to another edition of the Smart Driving Cars podcast. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alan Kornhauser. Hi, Alan.
Hey, good afternoon, Fred.
Good afternoon. And with us once again from Sweden, consultant, co-author of The Real Case for Driverless Mobility, and now publisher and editor of Mobility Industry Insights, Michael Senna. Hi, Michael.
Good evening, good afternoon. Great to be back.
Well, Michael, the focus of the June edition of Mobility Industry Insights is very timely, asking the question, should governments do any more for robot-driven cars than they did for human-driven cars? If so, what? And this was written, we should point out, before the relationship between Elon Musk and Donald Trump dissolved. And there's no telling at this moment, I guess, where that's going to lead relative to the question you pose. Of course, Tesla isn't the only company in that robotic vehicle business. So give us the overview here.
Well, the overview is that I decided to address an issue that I've been thinking about, have been writing about, but in sort of tangential ways, not really focusing on what this issue is concerned with. And the question that I pose and try to answer is, should governments do any more for robot-driven cars than they did for human-driven cars? And if so, what? In the mail that I sent out with the issue, I gave a very brief sort of description of what people would read if they did read it. And I answered the question with a spoiler and said, what did governments do any more than for human-driven cars? And the answer is not so much. So to begin with, each government has a way of approaching the world according to the ideals on which that country is built. So if we look at the United States, there were always, from the beginning, two views of what the government should do. On the one hand, the Jeffersonians essentially said the government should do very little. We don't want to get in the way of the freedoms of the citizens to regulate their own pursuits. And then along came there were the others at the time, looking for a stronger Hamilton, for example, looking for a stronger government. But it wasn't until the 30s and Roosevelt and the New Deal said that we should do more to take care of our citizens. So two different views, and that's played out very much so in everything that the government does, including transportation. If you look at each one of these general areas, you have China, the United States, Japan, and the European Union. All of them are working diligently in one way or another to support, to enable, to champion, to finance, or even co-develop cars that are driven by robots. But they're doing it in different ways and for different reasons. If you look at the United States, essentially it all comes down to make cars safer. There isn't the approach that's being taken as in Japan, which says we don't have enough human drivers. We're going to be out of business as a country unless we get more drivers. So we're going to support driverless vehicles because we need them. China, their goal is to be the world leader in everything. And if driverless cars come to fruition, they want to be the leader. So everything they're doing is focusing on getting to be in the position that they are currently with electric vehicles, whether it's for safety reasons or for future savings or whatever it is. That's secondary. The main purpose is we want to lead. And then if you look at Europe, what is Europe actually doing? Is Europe enabling? Is what the European Union and the Commission, are they enabling? Are they championing? Are they financing? Are they co-developing? maybe a little bit of enabling, championing. I can't really see them doing very much. I can't. Maybe some others can, championing the idea as in the United States with Waymo and Zoox and a few others. Are they financing? Absolutely not. Maybe they're financing through some of these projects 50-50. The commission puts in some money and you do a project, the project ends, and then you go on and do the next project. And definitely not co-developing. There's nothing there's nothing of the scope of what was done with aircraft, with the what's the name of the organization that builds planes that compete with Boeing? It's Airbus. The point of the article is what was done to start with. What was done when cars replaced motorized vehicles, replaced horses? And if we look at that carefully, we see that there were two types of driving environments. There was the driving environments in built-up areas, and in the built-up areas, that's where most of the cars and the horses and horse-drawn wagons were. There weren't interstates and intercity roads of any note. Yes, there were turnpikes, but the primary reason that people were riding around in cities was that's where most people lived, that's where the industries were, and that's where things were happening. As it turned out, when motorized transport was developed, there was very little, I won't say nothing, but there was very little that was done to either improve or enable in a way that would improve safety or the ability of pedestrians and cars to work together in a way that would allow the cars to do what they needed to do and people to live safely. And we see that in the statistics. The majority of the vehicle-related fatal accidents occur in those areas where motorized driving environments were overlaid on the former horse-drawn environments. So urban roads, 59% of the accidents occur, rural roads, 41%. And then if you take the other kind of driving environment, the ones that were built specifically for motorized vehicles, these are the multi-lane, limited access highways. This is where cars aren't challenged by bicycle riders or pedestrians, where cars are kept away from each other with divided motorways, limited access, so you don't have cars coming in at red lights or intersections, and those are the areas where things occur that we would rather not have occur, where cars making left-hand turns or right-hand turns and driving in the right areas. These are where the accidents occur. People walking in front of cars, children rushing out in between vehicles. Very little, if anything, was done in our cities to prevent these kinds of things happening. And now we're on the cusp of the next change, where we're introducing into the same environments vehicles that are being driven by robots. What are we doing? What has been done so far, and what are we doing? What's in the pipeline? What's in the works? Where are the governments involved in trying to enable or champion or finance or co-develop? What are they doing? And the answer is almost nothing. And the almost is in Japan, where they've taken this seriously and they are actually trying to build environments where cars and humans, both human-driven cars and humans on their feet, will be able to interact in safer ways. So part of their plan is to focus on driving environments in addition to the actual vehicles, the technology in the vehicles. Whereas in all of the other countries, all of the other locations, nothing or as far as I can see, nothing is being done to ensure that we have a better interaction between human-driven cars and humans on the bicycles, scooters, on their own 2 feet. So if you take the time to read all 18 or 17 pages, I've tried to outline the arguments, put in the information, put in the statistics, and try to get something moving here, trying to get people to say, look, we need to be doing things. And I've given some examples of the kinds of things that we could be doing. And if we look back and say, what were some of the ideas that people had that would improve the safety? Well, one of them is to raise up all of the cars, and the other one is to raise up all of the buildings. And neither one of them was a very good idea, because we had all of these cities that were already built. They were already constructed. But by 1900, most of the large cities in the world were already there in place. And did we do anything to try to make things better? Did we do like they did in Tokyo, take all the cars off the streets, no parking on streets? Did we do like they've done with undergrounds, where you put a barrier so that you can only get into the underground cars when the doors open, as opposed to having it completely open, and you can, like in New York or Boston or any place, and you can get pushed in or fall in front of a train. No, it was just, well, they'll figure it out. The cars, people are driving cars, they'll have to be more careful, and we'll make cars safer so that when they hit you, you'll instead of being rolled over, you'll fly over the top, and you'll be saved by some air cushion that will, instead of trying to do things that were active decisions. The other one is, why do we allow left-hand turns? Cities could be designed easily to have only right-hand turns. Okay, maybe you have to go around a block extra, but if you have single-lane streets, and you don't pile in scooters and bicycles and everybody else going in different directions, like Sweden, in the center of the city, they took away all the one-way streets for bicycles. So if you're a bicycle driver, which means for people in cities, if you're a bicycle rider, it applies to a bicycle with a motor. It applies to e-scooters. It applies to mopeds, because mopeds think they're bicycles. And so you've got all of these vehicles going in the wrong direction, with cars parked on both sides of the streets. And who's going to pay? Well, it's the pedestrians who are going to cross the street and get hit from the side they're not looking to be hit from. Instead of doing the kind of active engagement, now we've got Washington State just passed a law that called the Safe Streets Law. And they're saying, well, we can do what they did in Europe, where you combine pedestrians and cars together on streets, and you eliminate sidewalks, and everybody's on the street, but the cars have to drive at no more than 10 miles an hour. Well, that's great. What happens in a place like Liverpool, where someone decides, well, that's a lot of people I can kill all at once? And it happened here in Stockholm, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. They drove down a pedestrian only street. I don't know how many people were killed. I can't recall. It's a block in my memory. How many of these occurred in Christmas markets in Germany over the time? The people have these ideas, these novel ideas, like cars aren't really dangerous, and now we've got cars that aren't going to have people inside. We're going to be moving in the same types of environments that cars with people are, and we say, well, they're not going to do what the other people did, because they're not going to get, they're not going to be drunk, they're not going to be on psychedelic drugs, they're not going to be all of these things. Well, things can happen, and they will happen. So my point is, try to begin to work toward redesigning our city streets to be both pedestrian, non-motorized vehicle friendly, as well as vehicle friendly. The alternative is just eliminate all cars, so that you can't go anywhere in cities with cars. You have to find your way around and see how far that gets you.
Yeah, good luck on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, the safety thing is tough. Okay, and if that's the only reason for the public sector to be involved in mobility is to ensure safety, then one, they're probably not doing a really good job so far, because the things that they put out there, they don't enforce, and because they can't, because society has decided they don't want that enforced. I mean, uh, they put speed limits that are just jokes. Driving on the New Jersey Turnpike up to Newark Airport at 5 o'clock in the morning to pick up Helen. Speed limits 45 miles an hour. We're all doing 75. Okay, it is 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning. There is very very few people there. They're not doing construction. Why in the hell is the speed limit 45 miles an hour? So the things that the public sector has put out there, everybody's considered them to be a joke. And of course, they consider the whole other thing with respect to the relationship between one vehicle and another, a bicycle and so on, be ridiculous. And they go out and have too much to drink, and their car still stops when you could have a breathalyzer in every car, and it wouldn't start. I mean, that technology has been available for how long? But of course, you put that technology in a car, guess what happens? The internet is now full of the videos that tell you exactly which things that the clip disengage it. And there are just not enough people the masses of the people then decide these things we're just not going to put up with it, I guess. I don't know. It's a tough one. It's a shame that the public sector is not really into this providing mobility for everyone. Uh, you know, especially now. I mean, you can't even talk about equity.
That you're getting
You know,
back to the last mobility industry insights.
yes, I understand, but I understand. I keep getting back to it, but and probably what one should do with this is have the government, public sectors, maybe stay out of this one. Maybe technology can actually do more than the government could. Plus, they can't afford it. If
I
there's
don't agree.
been 330 billion invested in this industry since in the last 20 years, who who's going to put in any of the money to do this?
I think the government is doing things, but they're doing the wrong things, and the reason they're
Well,
doing the wrong things is because they don't have a focus. No one has thought this through. No one has said,
probably.
why do we not? How can we prevent people from being killed when they cross the street? No one has thought. I mean, New York has taken off their jaywalking laws, and it's jaywalking people who get killed. People
Yeah.
don't. It's kids or or people going into a crosswalk without having eye contact with the car and saying that car is not going to stop. I'm going into the crosswalk. They're going to kill me. Instead of doing that, I mean, I see it all the time. The kids are told, you know, you've got the right of way in a crosswalk. So they go into a crosswalk without even knowing that there's a car coming. And I'm driving my car. I'm distracted for a moment. The kid is doing something in the back, and suddenly I've killed somebody in a crosswalk. It shouldn't happen. You know, the crosswalk, if you're going to cross the street, you should it should be there is no car that's going to kill me. You can do these. All of these things are doable. But what we did was we took the street concept that was developed back in Pompeii. I've got a picture of it. And instead of the sidewalks being basically a foot off the road, now try to get a car up onto a sidewalk to kill people like they've been doing in wherever, Tel Aviv and Germany. Try to get a car up on a sidewalk where the sidewalk is a foot off the road. It can't happen.
Yeah, you
No.
can put a
So
New
we
Jersey barrier there, right?
yeah.
You
So
divert it off
we've
that.
got our sidewalks down to a place so that people can get up and off the sidewalk. Well, why do they do that? Well, because they're parking on the sidewalk.
And I'm jaywalking.
Yeah, and you're jaywalking. The Pompeii sidewalk where the stepping stones, the
That's so
stonewalk,
neat.
it's terrific. The
It's
cars,
terrific.
the carts go through there. They're this high off the ground. You can't you you get onto one of those things, and the purpose was to keep your feet wet. I mean, sorry, to keep your feet dry because they were, throwing
Because you
water
were
down there,
flushing the streets of the
and they were flushing the
pollution
streets. So
caused
you,
by the previous mode.
I, I, and this is 2000. This is 2,000 years ago.
There must have been so many environmentalists in Pompeii. I mean, they must have been ruling. Oh my goodness, those they were hugging trees like you couldn't believe there because
And
they got the
that's the
system.
reason.
That's that
And
is a good
that's
reason, man.
that
Uh,
stupid volcano killed all the environmentalists. Because if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't have any problems today with emissions. Because it was all the people in Pompeii who had the knowledge. They all got killed. That's the end
Yeah,
of it. That was it.
geez, we needed 2,000 years to go to regrow some environmental tree huggers in California or something. Is that what we did? Oh my goodness!
All right.
Whoa,
Okay.
I
I'm
guess
not sure.
we're diverting.
I'm
Um,
not sure I'm making my point here, but
you are making your point,
one of
though.
my
Yeah.
one of my readers said, but this is really an important issue. We really need to get this in front of people. And I said, oh, fine, send it to all your friends. Try to make it happen. He's somebody who's got a lot of important friends. Uh, but the idea of doing with sidewalks with people with the Japanese, especially in Tokyo, but I think in other areas as well with their undergrounds, of having barriers. And we're beginning to put them into Stockholm now. But the retrofitting is more expensive than if we put them in when we built these things. If we thought about these sorts of things, and the same is true with streets. Instead of putting, I mean, I just don't get it. You have a restaurant, and the restaurant goes out on the sidewalk, takes part of the sidewalk for tables. So now instead of having a 6 foot or a 12 foot sidewalk, you're now stuffed into trying to walk in two directions. You're stuffed into maybe 3 feet, cars on the other side of you. Oh, well, we can take those cars that are parked there and we can put a little area there and we can sit in the middle of the street. I mean, who's thinking about these things? What is in people's minds? Get all of the cars off the streets, then you don't have to worry about it. People can walk on the streets and but make sure when you do that, it's not possible for some idiot like the guy up in Liverpool to drive their car down the middle of the street and kill, I don't know how many people, kill and maim. Make sure that if you do take the cars off the street, you can't put a car back in there. To put a motor, do something to make it impossible for a car to go down that street. No, what do? We just, oh, okay, we close the street. Boom, truck. The guy in Stockholm had a dump truck. It was a garbage truck that he had somehow stolen and drove down the street, killing people all along the way.
Michael, did I read correctly in your newsletter that in Japan their plan is to build separate roadways for the
It's a
robotic vehicles?
combination. Yeah, it's a combination that the idea of mixing the cars with robots versus with those with people is unsure enough so that if they build special roadways, they can they can ensure that there's no difficulties. And maybe they build some separate roadways, see how it works, see if they're safe, and then eventually they can make changes to the other roadways. But at least they're thinking about these things. We don't know. We do not know yet how these things are going to work out when they're at scale. we can see Waymo, and Waymo's putting out all these papers that they're writing themselves, saying how safe they are. Yeah, ask Missy Cummings about this. She's written, she and her students and others. There are papers out there that look at this objectively. How can you possibly be a company who's trying to build this technology and saying we're writing peer-reviewed papers? If you look at the words that are used in these, robust and inventive and extraordinary, and I mean, it's like getting a letter from a college today. It's like using all of these superlatives, and come on, this is not the way you do that kind of research. And so um, yes, to answer your question, Japan is looking at this and looking at ways to separate the cars as much as possible, human-driven cars from robot-driven cars, to ensure that they can move and maneuver safely, and then see what happens. We should be doing more of that.
Both of you might want to comment. It's just days away now. The launch of the Tesla robotaxis in Austin is due on somebody's birthday right now.
Yeah, I mean, as I wrote last time, it would be a heck of a birthday present in some sense for them to launch now, given the new war that's going on between Elon and Trumpy Poo. I'm not, who knows what's going to happen with that and so on. But I guess they're going to launch in Texas. What it is, who knows? Is it? I can't imagine it will be driverless. I just can't imagine. I can't. I can't. I can't imagine one is that much of a risk taker to do that. To not put some substantial oversight on board. Remote oversight is, I don't know. My view is that that's just it's just not doable. But
And
maybe that's my
what is the
bias
point
on
if you're
it.
doing that? I
Huh?
suppose. What would be the point of doing that
Latency, and
if you're
you
going to
don't
have a
have a
safety driver
presence to the
remote?
problem. I mean, you're sitting there in front of screens and you really think that you have a feeling for what's going on and you're really aware. Oh my God, I don't know. I mean, every time I've been in any one of these simulators, airplane or driving or car simulators, I just, you know, it's just not the same as being out there driving, even if you're not paying attention. Your peripheral vision has so many inputs to it. Your rest of your body has so many inputs that you just don't get in some hollowed out mountain in Colorado or wherever you're hosting your control center. I mean, it just seems ludicrous.
Well,
So,
Waymo doesn't have any of that sort. The only thing
of
Waymo
course they
does
do.
is no, no,
No,
no,
they,
no,
they,
no,
they have
wait,
a
no,
control
no, no,
center,
no, no,
oversight
no,
center.
no.
I believe so. I think
They
that.
have a group of people who are there to answer questions if people have questions in their car. If the car gets into difficulty, they can send information to the vehicle. The vehicle
Yeah,
can execute on it, but they're not
yeah.
they have no control over the car. They're not driving
Well,
the
the,
car.
the issue is what you define as control. They don't put in the steering and a throttle command, but they put in a profile that they expect. I mean, any that gets executed, it's a sort of maybe a higher level command associated with
The
that.
command
That
the command is I'm stuck behind it. They can see they've got an image. They can
yeah,
see it's behind a dump truck.
yeah,
It's on a two lane highway. Cars are
right.
coming in the other direction. They can see that there are no cars coming in the other direction. They can tell the car move into the lane
Go
with an
around it or
instruction.
whatever.
Go
Yeah, go
around it.
around instruction.
Yeah, but they're not
Sure.
driving the car.
Well, it's a okay. First, we have to define our terms. What you call driving a car. If driving a car is every nanosecond, I have it's my foot applying to the throttle or the brake or the steering and one thing, but
Yeah.
why not concatenate some of these guys together, and one following the other, and just do it? I mean,
All right.
come on.
That's called driving.
I
Yeah.
don't. I mean, I think I can drive to Newark Airport with my eyes closed. I've done it so many times. Okay, so but that's a whole different,
Yeah.
philosophical statement out there. But yeah, but they do have oversight. They have look. These things aren't autonomous. They're told
But
what the hell to do.
but hasn't I think I saw that Tesla has said that they are going to have something similar to what Waymo has, a command center that if the vehicle gets in trouble, they'll go out, be able to go out and fix the problem like Cruise did and like Waymo does when the vehicle has a problem. That's
I do not believe, well, I'll wait to see that they have actually, I tried to parse the sentences as to what they really wrote, because you have to parse them and, whatever. But I can, if, you know, I'll eat crow if on June 12th they are out there moving those vehicles around on public streets without anybody in them.
but
Okay.
they've already said they're not. I think I've read they are not going to do that. They're going to have
Right,
somebody
right.
behind the
They'll
steering
have
wheel.
somebody,
Yeah.
they'll have an attendant on board.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay, great. We've done that here. I was doing that yesterday. Okay. BF, I
Yes.
would say BFD,
Yeah.
BFD.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a Chinese car, right? Yeah.
BFD is a Chinese. No, no, I don't. He said, no, never mind. I don't even know what it stands for. So excuse me, but big
Build your
deal.
dreams.
It's
Yeah.
all it's legal in New Jersey. It's legal as far every place except for maybe New York, where it requires you to put your hand on the wheel. But you can put your hand on the wheel too. I had my hand on the wheel too, but I wasn't doing anything. I was watching. I was prepared to do stuff.
Mhm.
Actually, it's only when I was actually driving that I inadvertently cut somebody off, and they beeped at me. I didn't, the thing it didn't get beeped at for doing something, whatever.
Yeah.
And it
Well,
was doing things better than I do them.
if you had been driving a Chevy, they wouldn't have beeped at you.
Oh, you think it was one of those January Sixers, the new version of January Sixers? Never
Yeah.
mind. Never,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Let's move along to some
Moving
other
along, we've got to
headlines.
get off this. This is not helpful.
From the Smart Driving Cars newsletter. FinanceBuzz is out with a report on autonomous vehicle safety, accidents, and reporting. The data comes from the Pew Research Center, the Brookings Institution, AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, NHTSA, and the University of Michigan, Alan.
Yeah, I think they have. They at least claim that. I just wish that if it really wants to put this out, they should do a much better job of citing what is meant by various things. A crash. What the heck's a crash? I mean, yes, Waymo is out there as having the most crashes of driverless cars, but they've certainly been out there. And what are the crashes? One was like 2 mile an hour little baby bump with a bus. How many of those things occur every day? I just noticed the little front end of my car this morning. Looks like somebody scraped up against it. Okay, so what are we counting here? I think that's really important. And what gets countable? Okay, you know, I was driving my car and it was on an intelligent cruise control at the time. Okay, and it hit a deer. Did Mercedes report that as they're supposed to NHTSA? Because I think what I have is a level 2 vehicle. I don't even know what a level 2 vehicle. I've never liked about levels anyway.
I hope that's not
Apparently,
another one, Alan. I know you'd taken out a number before.
yeah, whatever. But and so in a sense, there's a reporting bias that sits there on top of all these data. And you take one from one group that has one um, uh, uh, process procedure associated with the collecting of the numerics associated in the statistics, and another one that's another process, and the process can lead to you know differences. And so this is a very, very difficult situation, or a very challenging situation to do well. To me, the interesting thing about it is that even with these challenges, it looks to me like the technology's doing pretty darn well. Okay. And of course, that the technology does well is simply because the technology ends up being able to do things that I can't do. I can't look both ways at the same time. I have to look this way and that way and that way and that way and that way. Whatever. Every 36th of a second, I think it's on 36 hertz. Every 36th of a second, it looks 360. Now, you can look and not capture anything, okay. But if you
Yeah.
do, my goodness. And so the whole capability, and I think we're the situation we've found ourselves in after all this investment, this stuff can be really pretty darn good. And now it needs to be put out there. And maybe all the government should do is encourage its use. I mean,
I,
to me, the collision avoidance capability of these things. I mean, finally, NHTSA put out some things like last year or whatever, saying by 2029 or something, where you have to have automatic emergency braking. I mean, come on, really? The car manufacturers have to be told to put automatic emergency braking in their car. Why don't they put it in the first place? Really, it costs that much today? I don't think so. Mobile, I'll probably sell it to you from almost nothing, maybe. So I don't know. It's just it's somewhat it's some plus I've yet to see, here all the traffic engineers sort of want you to minimize fuel consumption and minimize fuel consumption. And well, you drive at constant speed. Well, okay, because why? Because aerodynamics, goes as v cubed. Okay. So, all right, but I've yet to see a sign along a highway in the US of A that says, hey, if you have cruise control, use it.
yeah. Well, you wouldn't find it any place in the world.
Probably
So
not any
yeah,
place. Why? Why is
because
that?
I've tried to say this many times over the
I
last
know.
X number of 13 years when we've had these kinds of conversations, because people who are in the position of doing things like this ask questions of individuals who are in the transportation business. And the answers that they get from them is we need to put more emphasis on having good technology because the technology will solve our problems. Instead of going back to the basics and saying, why do these accidents occur in the first place? You hit a deer. You said you hit a deer and you
Yeah,
were in automatic cruise control. Automatic
yeah.
cruise control doesn't do automatic braking. Well, how about if you had automatic braking and automatic cruise
Wait,
control that
I hope
actually
it
were
does.
no, it doesn't. Automatic cruise control doesn't do automatic
Right,
braking. When you hit a
intelligent.
when you
It's
when you
what?
hit when a deer runs in front of you, it's another issue. It's not automatic. Automatic cruise control doesn't work that way. You know that. It controls the speed of the car based on the speed of the car in front of you. It's not looking for deer crossing the road. No,
But
why
it's
is
an
the deer?
object. Why? I don't give a crap if it's a deer or if it's a 2x4, okay, or 8x8. What? Why do
Alan,
I care that it's a deer? I don't want to hit it. I mean,
I've,
who in the heck,
I'm going to
who
go
would go
back.
through trying
I'm
to,
going to
no,
go
no,
back
yeah,
one
don't worry.
step. I'm going to go back one step.
Yeah.
I said you had automatic cruise control on. Automatic cruise control isn't preventing you from hitting a deer. There's another thing. It's the deer hitting prevention system that's got to work at the same time as your automatic cruise control, which controls your speed. Whether you're going to controls your automatic cruise control controls your speed. It
So
doesn't
I don't
control
hit
you.
something.
You don't hit the car in front of you.
What,
And it's not hitting the
why
car
does
in
it
front.
care if it's a
It's not
car? You mean
automatic
that,
cruise
you
control
mean,
isn't automatic braking. Alan, come on. You know this. It's not,
but if,
what you're doing with automatic cruise control isn't automatic braking. It's
of course it is. It applies the brakes. And
no, it doesn't.
it applies the brakes all the way down to zero, or it should.
It's
Otherwise,
based
it's
on,
what if the car? Elizabeth and I were coming back from Trenton today on Route 1 behind a tractor trailer that had a marine box on it.
it's a marine box.
You know, a 53 container.
A container. Okay.
Container.
Yeah.
It passed under an overpass, and the clearance between the container and the overpass couldn't have been more than 1 inch. And I said to Elizabeth, if the tire pressure in those tires was such that it raised that thing up 2 inches, that thing would have hit that, stopped instantaneously, and would have killed us.
Mm-hmm.
Irrespective of, it was my intelligent cruise control was just following behind it. But because of the deceleration rate of that thing, because it hit a solid object, it would have been infinite deceleration. The brakes would have been applied, and we would have died. It wouldn't have been able to stop. So I agree with you. It is not automated emergency braking, but it certainly would. It might have tried. I would hope it would have tried. I would hope it would have tightened the seat belts and
Yeah.
put the bolster down so that the engine doesn't chop off my legs, as well as killing
Mm.
me, by decapitating me because I'm
Yeah.
passing under the
But
truck or who knows
Alan,
what.
we have automatic in Europe. Automatic emergency braking is part of the regulation, but automatic emergency braking is not automatic cruise control. You would hope,
But
I would hope that
I hope
all
that
of our
they're
cars and all of our systems were working together with all of these systems communicating with each other, but they aren't. They're regulated differently. They're
why
implemented
should they
differently.
be? Why should they be? Isn't
I
that the
know
fault?
you're
I mean,
asking.
come on.
Alan, I just asked when we started this evening.
Um,
I said I want to focus on one thing that's
I
not
know,
being
I know. I'm
focused on,
sorry. I'm
right?
sorry.
So
Yeah,
I said, and there's a little diagram in the issue that I wrote, and one of those is the driving environment. The
yeah,
driving environment and the car and the human person and the regulations. These are different parts. Everything is being considered. Except that nobody's really talking about the humans in the cars. We are in our book, but
yeah.
that's not until next year. No one's talking about the actual driving environment. The only thing that we're focusing on are the regulations that are related to the vehicle, and the vehicle is the sensors and how the vehicle is driven. All of these things have to be considered together, and it's the same with the systems that we're putting into the car. Automatic braking needs to communicate with automatic speed control, adaptive cruise control. It needs to be looking at hinders, the things that potentially could, like deer that will come out. All of these things need to be
Sure.
working together. So they,
Yes, we know that, and I hope we get there in some sense. And within the next question is, you know, who should be able to pass the driving test in New Jersey? Does it have to be a 17-year-old or older adult
what do you
person?
mean? You mean
What do I mean?
So 10-year-olds should be able to drive if they can pass the driver's test.
Well, should the driver's test include age as part of the test, as part of the requirement?
Which end? The older
Either.
limitation?
What's age have to do with it?
Yeah. So a
Okay.
5-year-old Elon Musk 5-year-old ex kid, if he is able to pass the driver's test, then he should be able to drive.
Yeah, the other parts of the drive. I mean, the driver's test should ask how well you can drive,
Yeah. Well,
and it
we
should
know
not
that.
say. But what does the age of the person have to do with how well you can drive?
Well, that's an interesting
What? Why
thing
does it
because,
have to be a person?
well, let's keep on it. Let's keep on the
No,
person
no, no,
side.
because that's where I want to go. I don't
Yeah.
care
Well,
about the age. I
all right.
really want to get
Yeah.
to why does it need to be a person?
It doesn't need to be a person if a person is capable of driving, and that hasn't been possible until very recently. But
Well, no, it's
we can have
possible.
all
So therefore we need to take it out immediately.
we can have all kinds of discussions about whether 5-year-old kids or 6-year-old kids should be put into the military. You know, for example,
I don't want to deal with the military. I'm just worried about one driving thing as to why in the heck it has to be a person. That's where I'm getting at. Okay. Why does it have to be a person? Because you have
well,
to say to the police officer, I didn't know I was speeding. I was just, I'm just on a nice cruise down the highway.
okay, Alan. Who got the ticket back in 1820 when the cart was being driven by a horse? Did the driver get the ticket, or did the horse get the ticket?
No, the driver.
Hmm. The driver wasn't capable of moving at that speed. If it was fast enough to be giving a ticket and the horse was doing the riding, the driving.
The horse is doing the riding. Wait, I'm now in the motorized vehicle pulling with the horse in the
No,
back and the trailer.
no,
What?
yeah,
Where am I here? I lost. Yeah. No, I mean
uh,
you give the tick. You can give the ticket to the one responsible for exceeding the speed limit.
okay.
So that
And
if
who's
if I'm the coder of the software, then give it to me. If I'm the one that sort of chose out of the pick list speed like hell, then give it to me because these things are told what to do by people.
Yeah,
So if
exactly.
they do the wrong thing, you can find the person that told them. So
That's
that's
why
the issue. Okay.
that's why Waymo has got the $65,000 debt to the city of San Francisco for parking their cars without a driver in areas where they shouldn't have been
Yeah,
parking their
they deserve
cars.
to get them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they
They
should pay.
and
Holy heck, they have Alphabet.
Alphabet. Yeah.
They have plenty of revenue to pay it. Why would they be scofflaw?
Here's another little piece of information that I picked up that I didn't realize until I saw this. In California, a car without a driver cannot be charged with a moving violation because a moving violation requires that there is a human driver behind the wheel.
Well, that's the problem with the regulation. The person that sent the vehicle and on that trip, that person should be given that entity because it is a person. These are not autonomous entities. Even though people have put the name autonomous, they have no autonomy capability at all. They can choose among a set of things, but somebody's given them the set over which to choose from. They're not creating the set for themselves.
I think there's going to be some discussion about whether either Tesla AI or Waymo AI will come back and say, that's not really the case. Our cars really are autonomous. They're making decisions on their own
No,
based on the
somebody
information.
programmed that in there. They didn't do that. Now
Yeah.
you might say, I mean, I do a lot of things. I think I'm autonomous. Okay. I think
Well,
I
you
make
are.
my own decisions. All
Yeah,
right.
you are. Yeah.
Even though Fred tells me to behave a lot. And so therefore I do try to follow his instruction.
I was going to bring Elizabeth into the picture.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, Elizabeth,
yeah.
I mean, she makes me behave.
Yeah.
Tries anyway. But 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 these things aren't so lawyers, don't worry about it. You can find somebody to hit on this. Okay? These things aren't doing it by themselves. And I can't even imagine a situation. Even Hal wasn't able to do it by itself in the movie 2001.
I got it.
Yeah, I
I
know
know
you got
how.
it, but
Yeah.
just make sure in case. I mean, there may be like a 16-year-old that watching this doesn't even know about
I
it.
hope I
Well,
hope not.
I
I
hope
mean,
they know.
this is definitely X-rated.
And this is definitely X-rated. Uh,
We have a couple of other headlines to touch
yeah.
on quick, Alan. From TechCrunch, a little-known patent infringement lawsuit could have big implications for Uber and maybe other companies. Karma Technology filed a lawsuit over patents it holds related to the system of matching riders or packages with capacity in vehicles. And you had a comment or two about this.
I don't know. I mean, we were doing this stuff in the 60s and 70s. I mean, I even, threw out in smart driving cars, Nigel Wilson and Joe Sussman, may rest in peace. I mean, come on, this is prior art. This really somebody went out and got a, come on, patent office. They're we're doing stuff. We even published it then on this. Come on, cut it out.
And the Transportation Research Board, the TRB, revamping its committee structure and activities.
Um, that's a dangerous one. That's to me that's similar to the attack on Harvard. Um, that's just what simply because some entity gets money from the government, therefore it's only supposed to do things that the government is going to allow it to do. What? And have those things done by volunteers who will just line up and do what the government wants them to do. I mean, the whole opportunity of the whole committee structure was to have a whole community of people involved in trying to figure out what is the best from the experts in that community to do.
If you
And
could
most of the
point,
work was being done. Most of the work was being done by volunteers.
Alan, you've been involved with TRB for many years, and you've been participating in
Yes,
many of
I
them.
have held a banquet at TRB annual
Yes.
meeting for
Yeah.
now 53
Yeah.
years in a
And
row,
yeah, and
except
you've
for
been,
the one year. Well, the one year the COVID, we held the banquet on Zoom.
yeah, virtual
Okay,
banquet.
I may be of the folks involved in TRB. I may have the longest streak of attending down there for
Good.
TRB. I mean, I'm at 53. Somebody who has more than 53 who started going and hasn't missed since before the 1973 January meeting, please let me know. I'd love to know who you are. I don't
For
think such a person exists.
for all of your listeners to the webinar who have not participated in TRB and aren't really maybe not aware of what TRB is and what it does. What's the number one thing that TRB has done during this period of time that you've been associated with it that you can say has significantly helped transportation?
Well, I think I think en masse, it's been an aggregation of people who believe they have expertise and passion in transportation to interchange and exchange thoughts pretty relatively openly,
Mhm.
with not lockstep, but disagreements and so on, and be able to then promote things that each of the individuals thought was worth promoting and so on and so forth to try to improve mobility for people and goods. And it's
Okay.
been this community through the committee structures and all the things that came out of that that sort of um, brought about thought advances, a point to try to improve the discussion of what goes on in this community.
Such
But
as,
such as in the airports, rail, whatever you pick the mode.
but
Okay,
they,
even personal rapid transit and automated vehicles and all the other things. Okay, and
but
they've done
if
what they could in terms of handling, putting on conferences to have exchanges, and whatever, and promote things like, getting women involved in transportation, which we started doing in probably 1975.
that's
Okay,
great. What that does something. It employs women. It does something. But
it
what I'm
gives it
looking
a
for,
broader perspective. We were always looking for a broader, I
yeah.
think.
So the broader perspective. Let me make an example. There
Sure.
was a broader perspective that was applied recently in New York City that said we have to eliminate all laws on jaywalking because there are negative effects of jaywalking on a specific group of people who are being fined. Is that the kind of thing that the TRB promotes? Or is it more we need to build roads that people can see when it's very dark and there are no lights on the roads to ensure that it, visibility is higher? I mean, what's the perspective?
I would say that both perspectives, all
Both perspectives.
perspectives,
Okay.
both perspectives. I mean, with the respect of the jaywalking thing, the problem is the um, the application of the law non-uniformly.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Uh,
that's the problem, and is the solution to the non-uniform application to eliminate it or do uniform application.
yeah.
Okay. And it is also maybe one should have some amount of non-uniform application because, in fact, the law itself impacts other viewpoints differently than some viewpoints. And so
I don't know
since
how.
there's a difference in viewpoints around society. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
who,
A
there is
person of
diversity. We are
yeah.
all different, darn it. We're not
But
all the same.
but we all die. We all die the same way if we're hit by a car. If a
Sure.
person isn't not hit by a car because they're of a certain race, they're a certain religion,
Yeah.
they're a certain height, they're a
Yeah.
certain age, they jaywalk, the car doesn't see them, they go in between two cars and they're hit,
Yeah.
irrespective of anything related to their sex
Yeah.
preferences
Yeah. Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
And to say that we're going to eliminate jaywalking because this group of people is disadvantaged by jaywalking. Well, what about this? What about saying everybody else cannot jaywalk, but this group that's been disadvantaged by jaywalking can cross the street without worrying about getting a ticket for jaywalking? What if we did that?
Maybe I don't know. Maybe that's a better solution to this problem than eliminating it at all. But but so so I it's a difficult issue.
But the
Okay,
problem
and
is that
one
we're not,
across the
it's a,
board, solution to it is not necessary. Everything has positives and negatives. Everything. Okay. And there is a trade-off. And we can't get to zero crashes, zero deaths, zero anything, me live forever. You wouldn't want that to happen, especially the last thing. Okay. Neither do I.
But as you know, when you get into when we're discussing this, for years
Yeah,
I was engaged, heavily
yeah,
engaged
yeah,
in IT, intelligent transportation or
yeah.
intelligent transport
Oh, geez.
systems. And the focus there was on what can the technology do for us to improve
Yeah,
the safety, the lower emissions,
yeah,
to lower congestion. No one ever
sure.
talked about congestion charging as a way of increasing the budgets of the communities. No one ever talks about giving tickets to people as a way of bumping up the amount of money you have to to do the job that you're supposed to be doing in the cities. But
Agreed.
this is all part of that. What what I what I tried to do in this issue, to bring it back to the original question, what I
Hmm.
tried to do in this issue is to say we're spending a tremendous amount of money and time on moving people, individuals, humans, out of vehicles and trying to build vehicles that drive themselves. For what purpose? Japan has said the purpose is very simple for us. We don't have human drivers. We need to have the cars moving and trucks moving. Therefore, we need to be able to have cars that can drive themselves, because we're not going to be able to drive them with the people that we have. That's a very good reason to do it. That's a very, very good, solid reason for doing it. But to say we're doing this because we believe that the cars will be safer if there's no human in there, because it's the human that causes the problems. That is bullshit. That just is not, that is not,
You're that. I agree with you. I
yeah, but
agree
there,
with you.
yeah, but there are
We're not
people who,
trying. I'm not trying to solve the safety problem. I'm trying to solve the mobility problem, and the mobility first for some people who really need it.
I know,
That's what
I know.
That's what I'm working
Let me
on. Okay.
finish this. Let me
Yes.
finish
Go
the
ahead.
point.
Yeah.
I want to solve the problem with safety. We can't have 40,000 or 30,000 people killed in the EU or the United States. We're trying to solve problems that we could solve in different ways if we just concentrated on them. Don't
Yeah.
mix people with cars. Try to get to the point, and we do this on our highways. We don't mix people with cars. We don't allow people walking and bicycling on the highways. The result of that is that we get fewer and fewer people who are dying. The people who die on the highways are the people who really are doing bad things, like driving drunk and driving into cars and driving off the roads. Those we can, and the things like breathalyzers not allowing you to start the car. Those are the kinds of things we have to have in the cars. We have to get away from the concept of saying we can solve the safety problem simply by having more sensors, simply by moving the people out of the cars and having all the sensors doing the driving. That's my point.
And we agree on that point. That's why I never say that I'm trying to solve the safety problem. I can't solve this. I agree with you 100%. If you really want to solve the safety problem, put a governor in the car and don't let it speed
Yes.
or speed
Number
very
one.
much.
Number
Put the
one.
breathalyzer in there.
Number
Okay.
two.
Don't let Apple put up a thing saying I'm not driving and force me to lie.
Yeah,
Okay. I mean,
exactly.
I hope some lawyer takes Apple to court on this thing when somebody dies because they suckered them into saying I'm not driving. The, this thing knows when I'm driving. It has
Yep.
two cameras. It has a GPS receiver. It has an accelerometer on board. It sees me behind the steering wheel. It knows what car I'm in and that I'm supposed to be driving it. Cut it out. Oh, I didn't know. You said that you weren't driving. Oh, therefore it's not my fault.
So
Bull.
just
Why do you let me open this up and read my email and read my text and answer the phone? The reason why you do, the reason why there isn't the governor, the reason why there isn't the breathalyzer, the reason why the collision avoidance system allows me to drive right up the back bumper of the guy in front of me and honk at him, okay, is because if it precluded that on the internet, the AI would tell me exactly what I need to do that car to clip this wire, clip that wire, disengage this, disengage that, and I'm back to being free. And these cars have been sold to me for my freedom to misbehave. Okay. So I put it on Mary Barra in her advertising campaign for GM cars.
And what
Okay.
is TRB doing about that?
Uh, I don't know. They never did anything about it. They thought I was crazy when I make comments like that. So therefore,
Yeah.
but at least I
Yeah.
was able to make them before I was on some subcommittee, sub of a subcommittee, way back. And, nobody's going to pay attention to those crazy people. And therefore, I really didn't have much of a say in what the heck went on. And, I should be just as happy that it's now, going to be just mouthpiece of propaganda for the existing administration. I don't know.
I think it's absolutely time. Your suggestion is right on the money. It's time for a new organization that's going to do things. It's going to be focused on doing the right things, not on what we think might be appropriate given the funding that's being given out there, and what the NHTSA or the EU or whatever these organizations think about doing.
It's the same suggestion that I have for universities that are being told what students to admit and what students not to admit. I look at our great university here, the amount of intellectual property that is generated every nanosecond at that university, and geez, some of it must be monetizable. And if it is, it should be able to pay in the end for all that plus more and pay taxes on the monetization of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
if in fact the IP, I mean, some IP is just good for society and has no, you can't monetize it. Maybe 90% of the IP that's generated here is not monetizable. But I think 10% of it is. And out of that 10%, probably 3 or 4% of it is monetizable at a 10x rate and whoa, or 100x rate. And if you put that in there and say, fine, instead of us being again an arm of government to do what government or who knows what some administration wants us to do, and heaven forbid a new one comes in and now we have to change from what we were doing, we have to change over here. You know, what happened to academic freedom? What happened to, the fundamental search for knowledge, improvement of humankind and all that? That's, I mean, one would have thought it would come out of government too, but apparently government seems to be interested in something else these days. And okay,
Well, government, we're going to get into another kind of discussion
yes,
later,
we
but
shouldn't get into that discussion because all of a sudden, Fred, we're going to be melted on the inner tubes, and they're gonna take away our bits and bytes. Ooh,
What a discussion here. Alan, just one more headline from SpaceX. You highlight a video titled Elon Musk, Mars and Beyond, the Road to Making Humanity Interplanetary. This was put out May 29th before everything happened here. But interesting video.
well, I thought so. I mean, I used to read science fiction when I was like in high school and so on or whatever before, and been basically living a science fiction life. But that's it's just an enormous vision that seems almost unachievable, but it but it is, I think, achievable. And with the substantive things of what it would take to maybe begin to do it, and it just, I don't know. Maybe we have 8 billion people on the planet, and who knows how many organisms that all have to somehow coalesce on this planet. And we really need to do everything so we all coexist well right here. But to have just sort of one little adventure out here that might lead to that kind of thing. I mean, to me, this is what it would take, and the way it was put is, almost sit there and you can almost see it somewhat achievable. It's crazy stuff, but not really crazy stuff. And I don't know, to have part of the planet involved in doing this. I don't know. Maybe the Chinese will pick it up and do it now that, who knows what will probably stomp all over it. I mean, changing the NASA administrator docket. I don't know. I don't know what happened in Washington. It's just such a shame. Such a shame.
On that note, I guess that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Michael, we want to thank you again for all of your insights. In fact, it's called the Mobility Industry Insights. And the site for more info is michaellsenna.com. Thank you, Michael.
My pleasure. Great to be with you.
You can find us at smartdrivingcar.com. My reports on consumer tech are at techstination.com. Thank you for watching or listening, and stay safe.
Thank you, everybody.